welcome to another episode of Two Guys and a Chainsaw. I'm Todd.
And I'm Craig.
And today we have a very special guest here. Joining us in China is my dad, Craig. Craig, say hi to everybody.
Well, hi, everybody. Glad to be here.
Now, as we've talked about before on this podcast, my dad isn't a huge fan of horror movies, but he liked to indulge me as we were growing up. And so he would rent horror movies for me, and occasionally he would rent one that he agreed with that we could watch together, right?
That's correct.
It just couldn't be too gory or whatever, right?
I'm not for slash and blood, no.
That's true. But you chose this film.
Yes. Well, I think it's a little bit different than the ordinary zombie film.
It is.
This movie that we're talking about is called Train to Busan. It's a 2016 South Korean zombie apocalypse action thriller, according to the Wikipedia page. And it's directed by Yeon Sang-ho. And we're going to screw up all the names in this, I think.
Oh, yeah. Bad.
Yeah.
But it's a great movie. I've enjoyed it. Now, this came as your recommendation, Dad. So please tell me, why did you decide this film for us to do together?
It was one of those late night shows. I was up and wanting to watch something a little bit different. I'm not into real zombie shows, but I looked at the read up on that, and I thought, well, this might be a little bit different. It might be something I'd like to see. So I pulled it up and gave it a try.
And it must have made an impression on you since you wanted to watch it again.
Yes, it did. I enjoyed it very much.
So here we are. Craig, had you ever heard of this film before?
I have. I had heard the title, but that's it. Like, for whatever reason, the title struck a bell. I recognized it, but I didn't know anything about it. And I know you've talked about your dad a lot, very fondly, on our podcast before, and so I was really surprised that this was what he picked. But after I watched it, I think I get why. I'm not a big fan of zombie movies either. I've said that on the podcast several times. But I really liked this one, and I think that the reason that I liked it was because it's so well made, and especially the characters are so well written that you really care about them.
Yeah.
And so you really invest yourself in the plight of these characters. And, it's a zombie movie. Spoiler alert, people die. And I found myself getting emotional at several points throughout the movie. And I will confess that I shed a few tears, which really surprised me. But ultimately, I really liked it. I just thought it was a really good movie.
Yeah, I was looking over at my dad, and it felt like his eyes were watering up a little bit.
Oh, yeah, they were. Even the second time around, I knew what was happening.
But you had even forgotten a couple major plot points, right?
Yeah.
So, this movie, while I was watching it, it's funny you talk about emotional, because here we are in China, and both China and when I was in Japan, it seems like the Koreans have the foothold on television dramas over here. All the Chinese folks, all of my Chinese friends, everything that's super popular over here is not the Chinese television shows. It's the Korean soap operas and the Korean dramas that are popular here. And I think one of the reasons for that is they're much better written. At least I've been told. But another reason is pretty obvious even without being able to understand what's being said, is the quality of the acting. Mm-hmm. I don't mean to knock on China, but I think anyone could kind of watch any Chinese-made film for about 10 minutes, or a Chinese-made television show especially for about 10 minutes, and realize that the acting is not so great.
Well, I love Jackie Chan, but even Jackie Chan's movies sometimes it's a little bit hokey at places.
Yeah, it's a little overact. I mean, it's just like a different style of acting, you know?
Yeah, just different.
It's just different. It's not so natural. But the Korean dramas tend to be extremely dramatic.
And I have to say, I picked this one because it was the Korean movie, and I watched it because it was Korean, because recently I have stumbled upon the Korean genre there. And even though it's subtitled, and I'm not wild about subtitled movies, the acting and the quality of the film and everything, you really got hooked into it and like you said, care about the characters and what's happening. And so if it's a Korean show, when I'm looking at different things to watch, I'll kind of lean towards those over other things just because of that.
Well, we watched you saw The Host too as well, didn't you?
Oh, I loved The Host, yes.
Yeah, great movie.
Yeah, so there just seems to be a thing.
Yeah,
right?
I know I mentioned to you before Tiger Mountain. I don't know if you've ever watched Tiger Mountain.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not a horror story, but it's more of a war story. But it's a Korean one, and it's more about the development of the Chinese government from the old feudal warlords into the People's Republic of China. But it's just a whole story about this village and these Chinese national soldiers that come to kind of save them from the feudal warlords. And It's really a good show.
Well, so we all agree the Koreans are making great movies.
Yes.
It seems like it, based on my limited experience.
This movie starts out with a man driving up a truck up through a mountainous region in Korea. And he's stopped by some folks who are spraying down the roads, and he's told that he's entering a quarantine zone, that there's been some minor leak from the nearby biomedical facility. How many movies start out that way, right?
Right.
And he's just bitching about it as he drives through, and he hits a deer. Complains about that too. And as he drives along, the car goes by, but the camera lingers on the deer, and pretty soon the deer straightens itself up and stands up and turns to us with zombie eyes.
Yep. Zombie deer.
Which I thought was actually a really great way to start the movie.
Yeah, and I can't believe that we've now reviewed 2 movies that have had zombie deer in them.
No kidding,
How
right?
random is that?
Somebody needs to take this and run with it, this zombie deer. I have a thing here. And then we get to focus on our main character, which is, I'm going to mispronounce this probably, but it's Seok Woo. His name doesn't get mentioned a whole heck of a lot anyway, but he is a hedge fund manager, and he has a daughter named Soo-an. And as the movie starts out, we get to hear a little bit more about him and his family. So we see that his daughter, he's obviously divorced, and he's a single dad right now. His daughter is being taken care of by his mother at home, and there's clearly some tension in the family. He is at work, and he's talking with his coworker, and we also happen to see that somehow they also have some interest in this biomedical facility. It's maybe one of the maybe it's a big aspect of their fund portfolio. One of his subordinates comes in and asks what they're supposed to do about some of the latest weird things that are happening. And sort of like, Craig, what other movies have we watched where it's a zombie movie and it starts out slowly and the film is slowly piecing out to you kind of in the background or through news reports or things like that weird things are happening as kind of a build-up?
Oh gosh, I don't know, but it happens all the time, and it's subtle, and I really like it, And I thought that this movie did it really well. What we learn about this guy, and I didn't even write their names down because I knew that even if I wrote them down, I would mispronounce them because they don't look anything like they sound in their native language. So I just call this guy Business Guy. Business Guy's daughter is unhappy because he doesn't spend much time with her because he's so involved in his work. And she wants to go, it's her birthday, and she wants to go to Busan where her mom lives for her birthday. And she says that she's willing to take the train by herself, but she's very young. What would you say? She's like 9, something like that?
Yeah, I'd say that's good.
Yeah, about 9. And he tells her, I'm way too busy and you can't go by yourself. But his mother kind of lays a little guilt on him, and the daughter lays guilt on him, and so he decides that he will take her. And so they get up early the next morning, and like you said, there are just all these small kind of signs, like they're driving along, and then all of these fire trucks go by them, towards some emergency. And the little girl puts her hand out the window, and the ash is falling like snow, and she catches some in her hand. And the dad looks over to his out of his window, and there's a building burning, like a skyscraper burning. And then they get on the train, and it's kind of background. I mean, we're looking for it because we know this is going to be a monster movie or a zombie movie, but it's just kind of little things like commotion going on the train platform, and strange people running, trying to get on the train. And then right before the train takes off, this odd looking and acting girl kind of bolts onto the train behind the train attendant so he doesn't see. And of course, we know what's coming, but it's played very subtly and I thought very well and very suspenseful. Like, even though I knew what was coming, I was like, wow, like I was getting excited. Like, here they're going to be on this train and it's going to be chaos all around and what's going to happen and how are they going to deal with this? And I just thought it did a great job. And this is all very early in the movie, like in the first 10 minutes. So it doesn't take a long time to get to the excitement. And I thought that was great.
I thought it was a real subtle touch, too, as you mentioned, the build-up. As they're on the train and the train is pulling away, the little girl is looking out the door, and she sees the top head of a man running like he's trying to catch the train. And all of a sudden, you just see this blur, this flash. Somebody's jumping on top of him, but it's just so fast. You know something happened, but you don't know exactly what.
Yeah.
Right.
That was really cool. It's like, what's that? Right? And it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are all these nice little things. And even on the train up above. Now, I've ridden the train to Busan, actually. It wasn't nearly this dramatic. But these high-speed trains do have, like, entertainment in there. And they'll have the TVs down. And you can see in the TVs, they use that technique to show us news. And this is also cool because later on, as things are going on in the rest of the world, the passengers can see the news on the televisions that are on the top of the carriages. And I thought that was pretty handy for them to have that device, because if you're setting this whole thing on a train and you're wondering what's going on with the passengers and how are they going to deal with it, and you know stuff is happening in the outside world, you kind of are always asking yourself the question, as I was through this, what's going to happen once they get to Busan, right? Like,
right.
Are they going to be any better off than they are now? And that's a device, along with their cell phones, that kind of allows them to gauge and get that suspense and aspect of the story in as well.
Like you said, there's TVs and stuff that are showing the news, but just as the passengers are not really paying attention, we only kind of get bits and pieces. So we see that things are happening, but it's not like we're getting the full report because, the people aren't really paying attention, at least until things really start to go down. But I also liked how when they got on the train, this could have felt very contrived, but I didn't feel like it felt contrived. Really quickly, we are introduced to most of the main characters that we're supposed to care about.
Right.
Like there's a train attendant girl that we see, and I thought that she was actually going to be a larger part of the plot, so I wrote down her name, but she's one of the first to go. But then there's a teen boy who's part of a baseball team, and a girl who has a crush on him, and they're going to be fairly large characters. There are two older ladies who it turns out are sisters, and eventually we meet a couple, this larger guy and his pregnant wife, and it felt very natural to me, the way that the camera would spend just a few seconds with these people and then move on to somebody else, but it was enough for me to understand, okay, here are the people that I'm going to care about.
Right.
Here are the people that I need to watch, And as it turned out, all those people, not all of them had big character arcs or anything.
No.
But all of them were in some way, I don't know if relatable is the right word, but recognizable. Young teenage kids, an older pair of sisters, they're sympathetic characters,
yeah.
I guess is what I'm getting at. I don't know. I got invested in them right away, and however they managed to do that, it worked for me.
Yeah, and that's definitely a function of the writing. And then you also have conveniently the COO of such and such train company. I don't think it wasn't Korail, which is the railway that they're on, but maybe I don't know. Somehow he had some connections to the operation of the train line. I considered him kind of a stock character. You see this guy, and immediately he's going to have some problems. He's going to be causing issues for everybody. He's thinking only of himself. And if I had any knock on the movie, it was in a film where all of these other characters are pretty relatable and don't seem that stock. This guy to be thrown in there as the big bad meanie, it felt a little contrived.
Okay, all right. I will go with you on that it totally was contrived, but I liked the fact that, and I Rich Asshole is my name for this guy. And I just liked the fact that in a zombie movie where the real threat is the zombies, of course, the true villain, or villains, as it turns out, are human. And that's what I thought was really cool about this movie. You know, I felt like it had... There was messaging, you know, going on here. Like, even before they got on the train, the dad, you know, he's super busy. He's a business dad, and he missed his daughter's recital. And she was really upset about that. And she says to him at some point, you only care about yourself. That's why Mom left. And that really gives a starting place for him to really have a character arc.
Yeah.
Because, you know, throughout the course of the movie, you know, it's not like it's immediate. She says that, and then he's like, oh, you're right, I'm a changed man. But over the course of the movie, he, you know, evolves, and it doesn't just become about him. It becomes about, you know, looking out for your fellow man and your friends and the people that you care about. And you just don't see that very often. You know, you don't see that kind of character development. You don't see that kind of messaging, especially in a zombie movie, very often. And I thought that this movie did a really good job of exploring, you know, what humanity means. You know, you've got these, eventually we're going to get there, these zombies are freaking cool zombies, some of the coolest zombies I've ever seen. Yeah. And they're scary. This is a scary movie. You know, we watch horror movies every single week, and I don't usually get scared. I was on the edge of my seat a lot of the times in this movie. But it really is, I think, a story about humanity and about what it means to, you know, be a person and to care about your fellow man. And gosh, you know, that's way deeper than most of the stuff that we talk about.
Even if it was a little on the nose at times. But yeah, I agree with you. I liked the fact that was and it came about fairly naturally. This guy, throughout the course of the movie, kind of learns that he needs to look out for other people because he quickly begins to see how essential it is to his own survival. You know,
right?
And to his own daughter's survival in a very natural way when he's kind of put on the other side of the fence at times, to where he needs the help of others.
Right.
And again, like you said, it's not like they stop the film and go, you know, and he says, I'm a changed man. I now see, daughter, how important it is for me to look out for people, and I promise I'll do that from here on out. You just kind of see that start to happen in his actions as it goes along, and that's really quite good.
And it doesn't really come about on his own. He has a lot of... He gets hit over the head a couple times about it. The young couple with the pregnant wife, the man, the husband, calls him on it because the businessman father does something very selfish, again, looking out for himself, trying to sneak himself and his daughter off or whatever. Of course, it doesn't work out. And he says, the businessman confronts him and says, you're a jerk.
Yeah.
All you care about is yourself. He has to point it out to the guy, you know, hey, what are you doing, you know?
Well, there's even that conversation in front of his daughter.
Yes.
Right? The pregnant woman is in the bathroom, and the daughter's waiting for the bathroom, and that's how she meets up with the pregnant woman's husband, the big guy, right? And and they have a little chat, and it's like this big guy kind of is like, I can see your people like your dad from a mile away. I know exactly what they're like, you know. And he just asks her some questions about him, and says, oh yeah, he's a hedge fund manager. He's used to leaving people behind. He's used to screwing people over and that kind of thing. And she's like, don't see that in front of her daughter. Yeah. And she's like, oh, I know. Because I'm one of those people, right? So you're right. It's a nice intricate little web there.
It's just really well written, I think. You know, the characters are very believable as real people. None of them are perfect. I don't know. I just believe that these people could have come together on a train. And, you know, like I said, you know, at one point, some weird girl, you know, jumps on the train. And as it turns out, this girl is infected. And then very quickly, she turns into a zombie. And the zombie metamorphoses in this movie are super quick. Like, if you get bitten, the transformation happens almost instantaneously, like within seconds or minutes, depending on, you know, how much time they needed in the movie for you to have.
Depending on the dramatic needs at the time.
Right. But the transformations are really cool. You know, like, they'll be dead on the ground and then they will just like unnaturally bolt up off of the floor, and there's always like these bone crunching sounds, and they're moving in very unnatural, inhuman ways. And they've got, the foggy eyes. I've seen tons of zombie movies, and I'm really, they're okay. I'll watch them, but it's not my favorite genre. But these zombies, I don't know, like they were a combination of things. Well, first of all, they're fast zombies, like from 28 Days Later or something like that. They're not the lumbering, slow zombies. They're a little bit Sam Raimi-esque, like Evil Dead-esque, like in the way that they move and the way that they move so quickly.
Sharply jerk around. And...
Yeah, but they're really scary, and like this movie does a good job of building tension. Where I'm sitting here in my living room watching it on my computer, and I'm like, "What are you doing? Get out of there!" Like I was really having, like, my heart was racing. The suspense and the adrenaline. They did a great job. I'm just going to kind of gush about this movie because I was so impressed.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. The tension in it, like you say, they convert so fast. You had a whole train load of passengers in a car, and it just takes one zombie to walk in and bite, and within seconds, the whole car is infected, and they're in mass heading out the door for more blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it how the zombie goes in. The first thing she does is like basically infect the entire baseball team.
Yeah. Oh, it's wild. Like, it's just that one zombie they got on the train, and as soon as she bursts into one car, she bites one guy, and he immediately turns, and then he attacks and bites. And like you said, within the course of a minute, the whole train car is infected, and then it's just mass hysteria. It's chaos, and people are running. They're trying to run away from the chaos, and it's very exciting. I understand why it's billed as an action thriller horror, because it is very action heavy. It reminded me a little bit of I think it was World War Z. Was that the Brad Pitt zombie movie?
Yes.
It reminded me a little bit of that with the nature of the zombies, but better. That movie was huge budget. I have no idea what the budget for this movie was. It had to be fairly large because it was impressive. But that a Brad Pitt American summer blockbuster, and it was good. I liked it, but I thought this was even better. Again, I'm just going to continue to gush until you guys cut me off. So go for it.
We've done movies on trains too, and I think that what was the one that David Copperfield was in? Was it Terror Train?
Terror Train, yeah.
So, and we talked at that time too about the inherent issues of doing a movie like this on a train. It can go one way or it can go another way. I think in that movie we had problems with the train almost being too constrictive of an environment. It became a little unbelievable. Like, how can these things happen without other people knowing it? Or how can passengers be in one end of the train and make it to another end of the train without somebody else seeing them? A train is inherently, I think, a challenging place to have it. And in this movie, I was kind of wondering, how are they going to get out of this? Just from the very get-go, once that woman comes in and infects this whole car load of people, you can either go one way or you can go the other way. Otherwise, you're just stuck. And I thought, unlike Terror Train, which is more of a suspense movie of a killer who's loose on the train, in this one, it just seemed bleak from the very get-go. You have no chance, if you're anywhere on this train, of getting away from these people. The only thing that they can do is take advantage of, it sounds like, two of the zombies' weaknesses. One is they can't see very well, so I guess if it's dark, they find out later, then the zombies are more confused and they kind of stop what they're doing and start staring around. And the second thing is the sound. They seem to be attracted to sound as well, especially if they can't see. So as long as they can't see you, they're going to stop coming after you. If they hear something, they're going to turn around and run in that direction. Sometimes it works. Sometimes I was like, oh, really? Because a train's kind of a noisy environment anyway, especially a train full of snarling zombies.
Right.
Is a train full of snarling zombies who are headed in one direction going to suddenly stop and turn the other way if they hear, like, a Coke can crunch,
Sure.
But I'll give it a pass.
I know what you're saying, but at the same time, and with the sound, it was a little bit, I don't know, a little bit more tenuous, but I actually thought that it was really clever, that the humans realized fairly early on that the zombies only go into their, raving lunacy if they can see us. If they can obstruct the zombies' view of them, then the zombies kind of calm down. Like, they still stay active. They're still, like awake and kind of lumbering around, but they're not raving and trying actively to get at them. And so they can do simple things like the first time that they realize that is the case, I think it was a random woman, it may have been one of our characters, I don't know, but some woman just grabs a newspaper and slaps it up on the window of the door between the cars and sprays water on it and plasters the newspaper up on the window, and the zombies can't see them anymore, and so the zombies kind of calm down. I don't know. I thought that was clever and innovative. I've never seen that before. And later on, they do different things, like they use fire extinguishers to cloud out the windows, and I just thought it was really clever. The thing with the sound kind of comes up later because at some point they start going through a series of tunnels on the train, and they realize that when it's dark, the zombies can't see as well, but they will react to sound. And then there are all kinds of cool tricks that they do with misdirection, like, using, sliding a cell phone down the car and various things like that. Plausible? I don't know, because I've never been in a zombie apocalypse, but original? Yeah, I mean, I've never seen that before, and I thought it was pretty clever, and it made for some really suspenseful moments, and I don't know, I liked it.
A lot of original stuff in here.
And several surprise elements, of course, along with the action, some subtle, some more obvious, but like at the beginning of the show, when the infected girl pops in, and she hides in the bathroom. The conductor is told by one of the passengers somebody strange has gone into the bathroom, been there a long time. And they go, and the suspense is building as they approach the bathroom door, and the conductor opens it, and of course you expect to see this zombie jump out at him. But instead, there's this old hobo-looking guy huddled down on the floor in there. Now we find all of a sudden there's introduction to this new character where you didn't expect him to be.
Yeah, that was a good way to do it. Mm-hmm. It really was. And also, like, the very first victim, I think, is the stewardess.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Stewardess, is that what you would say?
Well, yeah.
The train attendant or whatever?
Right.
Yeah. We got so much of her at the beginning that I thought she was going to be a central character to this whole thing.
I did too. And then
she gets killed the first time. That's pretty shocking. And that kind of sets up that mentality, like, gosh, we really don't know who's going to live and who dies. It's something like The Walking Dead does really well, is it kills off characters who you figure are just going to live till the end. I felt like this movie really set it up from the beginning that way when it hung out so much with that stewardess and then knocked her off right first thing.
Well, and I thought that the movie did a good job of delivering some real gut punches too. Like, the zombies break out in the train. There's immediate chaos. It's a huge action sequence very early on. And it's chaotic, and the zombies are attacking everybody, and all the people are running, and like this goes on for a little while, and I was like, wow, this is really early in the movie. Is this gonna carry out through the whole thing? They found ways to take breaks in the action, which I appreciated, but the action scenes are really, really strong and exciting. But then even in the quieter moments, there are these gut punches, like after the first big zombie outbreak on the train, once they finally get some security, the first thing that business guy, our main guy, does is he calls his mom, or she calls him maybe, and she's on the phone, and the business guy is trying to talk to her and see if she's okay. And you can hear chaos going on behind her, and you can hear something strange in her voice, and you know that she's turning. And she's saying things like, take care of Suan, make sure that she's okay. I love her so much. But you can hear her turning, and eventually she turns on the phone. And, this man has just listened to his mother die, I guess, essentially, or turn into a zombie over the phone. And his little girl is standing right there looking at him saying, is grandma okay? And it just, it got me.
The little girl gets you a lot in this movie, I think.
She does. But I also like how she's a little bit bratty, I guess, a little bit in the beginning. I mean, you understand why, because she feels neglected by her dad, and they have this kind of tense relationship between them. She's a little bit annoying in the beginning, but then when they're put in peril together, to see them cling to one another, but at the same time to see her pointing out his flaws. As your dad mentioned before, they have to speed through the first stop. They say the first stop is not secure. We're going to have to speed through. And when they get there, you know, the zombies are all there and they're trying to like attack the train and stuff. But then they say, all right, the next stop, we are going to stop. It seems like it's secure. And the dad apparently has some military connection. And he says, you know, he's on the phone, and the guy's like, well, just get to the central square and we'll get you there. So everybody else is going one way, and the dad takes his daughter another way, and she says, where are we going? Why aren't we going with everybody else? And he says, well, we have to go to this place because it'll be safe. And she says, well, I'm going to go tell everybody else. And he says, no, in a situation like this, you just have to look out for yourself. And she basically calls him out and just says, you know, this is why mom left. You're a jerk, you know, and just to, you know, I think sometimes I don't have kids, but I work with kids. And I think that sometimes kids kind of slap you in the face with the reality every once in a while and really teach you something about yourself. And that dynamic, and then it progresses from there, and you see them, you know, in their peril, really coming together and clinging to one another, so that by the end their bond is so important to you know, the way that we feel about what's going on. It's really well developed.
Another interesting character relationship is the relationship between the businessman and the father of, or the husband of the pregnant woman. They're trying to get into the safe car after the first zombie outbreak, and businessman ends up at the door of the door between the cars, and he's trying to close it, and he's almost not going to let this other guy in. And at the end of the day, he ends up letting him in, and he shuts the door, and after everything is calm, he turns around and says to him, so I expect an apology from you. You know?
Yeah. Right.
And he doesn't really apologize. He's like, well, look, you want me to sacrifice the rest of these guys or not? And that almost like literally comes into play later on, because back there in the scene you're talking about, it turns out that no place is safe, and the zombies are attacking that train station. They have to get back to the train. And there they are at some glass doors. And here's this guy now on the other side of the door trying to get in. And, you know, it's funny because they didn't make like this a huge deal. You know, like some movies will be like, aha, the tables are turned. Now let's kind of play the same situation out, but with the roles reversed, you know, so that we can really hammer home the point that we're making.
Right.
But it's just more subtle than that, you know? And this guy ends up letting him through. And again, they don't make a big deal out of it, but you can see the change in Businessman as he kind of just naturally understands what's going on here, that he has to, you know, they need each other.
Right.
I liked that aspect. And then I thought that whole sequence there in the train station was really cool, wasn't it, Dad?
It was. I mean, just as you mentioned before, the action of the zombies and that. I mean, they get off this train. They're expecting the army to be there to protect them. They walk down the steps. They see as their vision becomes clearer and clearer of who's down below on the deck. You see the legs of all these army personnel and stuff, and they're thinking, oh, good, we're saved. And of course, as it becomes more clear, they're actually zombies, and boom. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're hit right away. And even though they're turning around and running back up the steps, of course, they're not all going to make it up the steps.
And they're on an escalator that's feeding them down into it.
And then one scene where they're being held back by some glass doors. It's like the movies where you see the aquarium break and the water just gushes out. It's like a sea of zombies, just glass breaks, and it's just this pile of zombies. It's just a giant mass bursting through the glass and tumbling on the floor all over each other, and then getting up, and as they're climbing all over each other, heading down the hall towards the passengers.
It's like a sea, you're right.
It is.
Like water.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. And even when they're down and they're at the train, and it's like they've kind of made it there, and the train's running, they've got to run to get on. And then up above, where they previously were, the walls, the windows of the place, like burst open, and the zombies are falling down a story onto the train, and then onto the tracks, and getting up and coming after them some more, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Oh gosh, the action sequences are so good and so suspenseful and tense. I was just on the edge of my seat, and that scene was one of the best ones. And the way you guys described it is exactly right. It's like waves, like they're just crawling over one another, and there are so many of them. So many of the zombies, and in comparison to how many of the living people that we're trying to follow, and even the characters that we're not entirely invested in. You've got this baseball team of teenage boys, and they are some of the last ones trying to run to get on the train, and they're just besieged by zombies, and all but one of them gets taken down. And even though I don't particularly I don't know these characters, I don't know who they are. They're kids, and they've fought so hard up until this point, and to see them getting taken down, it just kind of gets you. It's good.
And he seizes up there, and then okay, this is going to be his problem to overcome. He's going to seize up later and have to take the world. At all of this being said, I do have a bone to pick with one of the scenes in here.
Okay.
And Dad, I think you know which one I'm going to talk about. It's after they're back on the train after this relentless horde. Now, keep in mind, these zombies seem to be able to run towards us with whatever. They fall down multiple stories. They get back up. They have limbs and arms broken in odd directions, but still they can come after you. Then we have a sequence where they're back on the train, but because they've all had to get on this train very quickly, and the train was moving at one point, they're now split up.
Yeah.
So we have the zombies in the middle of the train, and on either ends, such and such cars are the survivors, and they're trying to get back to each other.
And the most vulnerable ones are in the middle. The pregnant woman, the kid, the old lady, and somebody else are trapped in a bathroom in the middle.
That's right.
The men, business guy, big guy with the pregnant wife, and baseball kid, they have to work their way from train number 9 up to train number 15 or something like that, and they have to pick up their loved ones along the way.
Yes. So, what do they choose to do? Just plow.
Yeah.
They wrap a few bandages around their arms.
Yeah.
And then they just attack the zombies fighting their way through.
And as we're watching this, I'm asking my dad. I'm like, okay, so they're beating their way through this car. So some guy swings a baseball bat at a zombie. He falls into the seat. Some guy punches a zombie or pushes him away. He falls into a seat. I'm thinking, so what? Like, we've seen these zombies fall like 2 stories. Why are they not coming back up behind them?
Right.
And that whole sequence had me kind of, are you kidding me?
It's a little silly, and even though what I was thinking was, even though they wrap their hands up in like leather straps or something, I don't know, they're punching these zombies. The zombies are coming at them. I was thinking, there's just no way that you're going to get through there without, you might get through, maybe, probably not, but okay, suspension of disbelief. But there's no way you're going to get through there without getting infected. Even if they don't actively bite you. I mean, if you're punching them directly in the mouth, you're going to get some of their blood on you in the cuts on your hands or whatever. So I understand your complaint with that. Nonetheless, it was exciting and heroic.
Very,
and I still liked it.
Very, very well. They go through a lot to get there.
Yeah.
Some of these scenes are really cool. This is when we get these tunnels that must be really, really long.
Yeah.
I like that bit. I don't know. What was your favorite sequence in this one, Dad? When they were going through the tunnels and they're kind of making their way down.
Like you, I was just struck with the length of the tunnels. They say, okay, well, we got this tunnel coming up, and it's in 2 miles, and if that one doesn't, if we can't get through that one, then we got another one coming up 10 miles after. But yet, these tunnels must be 10 miles long, because there's probably about 10 minutes of fighting sequence in the dark going through one tunnel.
It's true.
It does allow them the time to do some cool things, again, for dramatic purposes, right? I like the bit where they were crawling around the luggage racks. I don't know. I don't even know how I could even hoist myself up into a luggage rack, let alone, all 12 of them or 6 of them or however many had to get up there. Wasn't at some point did they caught up with a pregnant lady? I think this was after they caught up with the kids.
Yeah, it is.
And they were trying to make their way back to the rest of the survivors at the one end, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. It was cool, though. It was a cool sequence.
It was cool. I already mentioned the thing with the cell phone that they did at one point, and they do some other things with, noise distraction. But that crawling on, they had shown the luggage rack several times, so I thought at some point somebody might get up there. And it's dark, and the zombies can't see or whatever. And like you said, trains are kind of noisy anyway, so I could kind of believe that they could kind of scoot themselves up there. But I think that what made it tense for me is that they put the most vulnerable characters in this situation. There's a whole car of people who are still okay at the front of the train. Yet, the people who are in peril, aside from these 3 guys who have shown that they're badasses and can, beat their way through zombies or whatever, the rest of them are a pregnant lady, a kid, an old lady, and was there another one?
The hobo.
The hobo, right.
Mm-hmm.
Who seems to be either injured or somewhat disabled. Gosh, you put a pregnant lady, a kid, and an old lady, in
Who was left?
Right.
We needed a puppy. We didn't have a dog.
Right. Or like a blind girl or something. But it's very tense, because they're in such close proximity. But they get through. There's some hullabaloo with the homeless guy kind of falls out, and they hear him. And again, this is another moment where business guy, the dad, kind of shows that he's evolving, and he stays back to help this guy, and they get through. But again, like I said before, what really struck me was kind of the human drama, because at some point the teenage boy, the baseball boy, calls, it's not his girlfriend, but it's this girl that's interested in him. He calls her, and she's in the safe car, and he's like, we've got these folks, we've rescued these folks, we're on our way, we'll be there soon. And she's all excited, and she announces it to everybody else, and rich asshole guy is like, we can't let them in here, they might be infected. And so there's, they get through the car, crawling in the luggage rack or whatever. But then the zombies hear them and are on their tail, and they're trying to get into this safe car. And the people on the other side have barricaded the door, like not barricaded, but like they've like tied it off so that it can't be open. And I just found that to be so, I don't know, unusual, I guess, in this type of movie. And it's not entirely unusual. Todd, you and I have done Night of the Living Dead, and there were the group of people who wanted to barricade themselves in the basement, and they said, you can come with us or not, but one way or another, we're locking ourselves down there. Don't be trying to get in there later.
Yeah.
So it's not like this is entirely unique, but I felt like it was commentary on, zombies are bad, but humans are dicks. It's a dog-eat-dog world. Just look out for yourself, and who cares if grandma and the kid and the pregnant lady and the hobo are on the other, and the guys that have just rescued all these people are on the other side of the door. We're not taking that risk. And I thought that was really effective.
Yeah, it is, and it's kind of part and parcel of zombie movies, isn't it? It always turns into some Lord of the Flies situation.
I suppose. I guess it's not that original. I just thought they did a really good job with it.
That's why I stopped watching The Walking Dead. I got so sick and tired of these guys coming along, attacked by zombies, fight off the zombies, barricade themselves against the zombies, find some people who are going to help them. At first everything seems fine, and then they can't get along, and they fight, and then they go back out into the zombie world, and it seems like that ad infinitum. But yeah, I know what you mean, and I think that at this point was where I kind of wondered, where are they going to go from here? Okay, they're all together in the back of the train. Now I guess they seem safe. All the drama is going to be what happens when they get to Busan. But that, again, the movie throws you that curveball. Right, I said to Dad, what did I tell you once the group of people decided, okay, you guys are going to have to go to the front? I said, well, okay, that's great. It doesn't matter,
Sure.
right? Who cares
Right.
if they're together? At least they're in the adjoining train. And you said they're even safer.
Oh yeah, you're even safer, yeah, because now the whole car full of people are between them and the zombies.
Right.
But lo and behold, another surprise. The one sister got left behind that was in the group that finally made it into the car, and she's turned into a zombie. And the other sister in the safe car sees her and is so upset about it, she goes, and she's mad at the people for not letting them in, that she goes and opens the door and lets the zombies in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really liked it. You know, these two old ladies who had gotten separated.
cute, yeah.
And cute, you know. I don't know if that's the word for it, but like
Oh, it was cute. They were so sweet to each other.
It was sweet, and it was even sweet when you're seeing them on opposite sides of the door, and you've got the one sister who's still living, and the other sister who's a zombie now. She looks like a sweet old lady zombie. You know, it's not like she's emoting, but she's also kind of not raving like the other ones, and it's not like they lock eyes and share a moment or whatever, but the fact that the living one has a clear view of her sister on the other side, I just felt like at this moment she was just kind of like, F it, and and she just opens up the door and lets them in, and I absolutely loved it because I wanted to see those jerk ass people get their comeuppance. They were so mean. And I've never been in a zombie apocalypse, but I would really like to believe that I wouldn't be like that. But who knows? You know, maybe when you're in absolute peril, where it's life and death, maybe instinct takes over and you do, you know, just put yourself first. But I just, even, you know, the folks got in. They had to batter their way in, but they got in. And then even when they got in, the other people in the car were like, you might be infected. Get out of here. You have to get out. Like, it was just so mean, but and not unbelievable, you know, like I believe that could and might happen. But again, I just thought that it was the movie doing a good job of showing an ugly side of humanity, and that we can be just as vicious and nasty as a zombie horde.
And then comes another little twist and surprise in the movie too, because just as you think, that whole car got their comeuppance. I mean, nobody could have survived that, you know.
Right.
And finally, the bad guys are gone. Now what are these heroes going to do, you know? And lo and behold, all of a sudden, stuck inside one of the washrooms, that old a-hole man and the attendant survived.
Yeah. And he just continues to prove himself to be a bigger asshole as he goes along, right? Because he ends up pushing, he
pushes the attendant out the door so the zombies will go after him and he can get away.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it turns out they can't get to Busan, because there's a problem on the tracks at this one spot, and so the train actually has to stop. And the conductor comes over and says that they all have to leave and transfer. So the conductor runs off the car to find another train for them to get, and this starts a whole sequence of everybody coming off and trying to work their way across this train yard to get to another train.
And all the trains are full of zombies. I loved that. It was so creepy. Like, they're just walking along, and in every train, every car is like just teeming with zombies, like beating on the windows, trying to get out. It was scary. But it seems to be pretty safe out there for the time being. But then things start to happen. The conductor runs and eventually finds another engine. It's just like the engine car of a train, but he starts its going. Rich a-hole guy gets off and starts running and looking around. Our friends, our heroes, get out and they start looking around. Some zombie chasing and stuff that goes on, but then there's this huge action sequence where this flaming runaway engine is coming towards them, and it just rips through this train yard, and it ends up trapping the business guy and his daughter and the pregnant lady. We forgot to say that the pregnant lady's husband got bitten and infected and died.
Oh, that was horrible.
Really sad.
Yeah.
It was so sad. I can't believe we skipped over it. It made me super sad.
Why? Because it was so sad.
But it comes through and it ends up like the pregnant lady and the kid and the dad get trapped underneath this train car that
With
is
the
like
hobo.
tipped over. With what?
With the hobo.
Oh, the hobo too. I keep forgetting about him, and he's a good guy. I'm glad you keep bringing him up because he's a good guy. But they get trapped under there. At some point, the rich guy finds the train that is, going with the conductor, and the conductor jumps off to try to help him. And again, the rich a-hole guy just throws the conductor to the zombies so that he can get on the train. And then we have this action sequence where the others are trying to get out from underneath this train. And it was just such a cool scene because like this train car is tipped over almost entirely on top of them, and it's full of zombies, and so like they're right there with just a pane of glass between them, and they're struggling to get out, and eventually the dad gets out, but then the train shifts and something falls in front of the opening, and so he's trying to get that out. Meanwhile, the glass starts to break and zombies start to pour in the underneath where everybody else is, and the hobo, being the good guy that he is, sacrifices himself to hold them off until the dad can get the obstruction out of the way, and he gets the girl and the pregnant girl out, and they take off, but the poor hobo gets killed. The dad and the daughter and the pregnant lady see the engine, and they run towards it, but there's this huge horde of zombies chasing after them, and they're these big aerial shots where you see them running and you see just hundreds of zombies right on their heels, and they get to the engine and they jump on, but some of the zombies are able to grab onto the train, and it just turns into this chain of zombies holding onto the back of this train, climbing over each other. And oh my gosh, I just thought it was so scary. I was on the edge of my seat.
This pregnant lady is like the world's fittest pregnant woman at this point.
Right?
She can run fast.
Yeah, she can run. She can jump on a train. She's good to go.
You mentioned the big, huge aerial shots where the zombies are chasing him to the train, and I'm sitting there thinking, there's no way. Looking at the distance between the good guys in the train and the good guys and the zombies, the distance was a lot shorter between the zombies and the good guys than the good guys were to the train. There is no way they could possibly get to the train before the zombies overtake them. Another little play there. They had the zombies trip over each other, and all of a sudden there's a big pile of zombies tumbling over, and gives them just enough time to make it to the train before the rest of the zombies get to them.
Yeah.
It was awesome. It was awesome. And so there's this big, like, it's just a couple of, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 zombies hanging on and everybody else just glomming onto them. And then I would say it turns into like a mass of, I don't know, 100 or more just dragging behind the train. And eventually the dad, he like stomps on the ones that are holding on, he stomps on their knuckles and eventually, dislodges the whole thing. And it seems like they're going to be okay, but we know that rich butthole guy is on there, and the dad goes into the engine room, and the rich butthole guy is there, and he's infected, and he's turning. But it seems like he doesn't know it, and he says something like, "I'm scared, take me home, my mom is waiting for me," and he gives the address. And I was sitting here thinking, dang, movie, kudos for you for making me feel sympathy for this jerk of a guy. Like, he is such a jerk, but in this moment, he exposed such vulnerability, and like, he's scared and he just wants to go home to his mommy. I felt bad for him for just a second, but then I didn't really care.
I'm sorry, I didn't feel the same sympathy as you did. I was just grinning from ear to ear the whole time, because one thing we forgot to mention, is right before he got to the train, remember baseball guy and his girlfriend were also running from the zombies that had gotten out of the train there after that accident. And they made it onto another train and closed the door. We're trying to get out the other door because they knew the zombies were coming. And who shows up with zombies behind him is A-hole man, who then throws the girl in front of the zombies so he can get away. And, of course, she's infected, and he gets away. And the boyfriend's left there with the girl. Well, he managed to fight the zombies away from the girlfriend, but it was too late.
Yeah.
So here she is in his lap turning into a zombie. And
he's just despondent.
He's just so despondent. He just lays there. And, of course, she turns and he attacks him, and they're both gone.
Yeah, it was really pretty sad.
It was really sad, and you're right. I'm glad you brought that up, because that guy, even though I felt a little bit of sympathy for him there at the end, he was a real jerk. And that scene, it was super sad. It was very kind of Romeo and Juliet.
It was. I was thinking the same thing.
Something else that I liked about this movie, and I think that this may be a cultural thing, I don't know, because I am not nearly as worldly as either of you, but in this movie, men cry, and you just don't see that in American movies very much. Like when the teenage girl gets infected and again, it's not her boyfriend, but they've bonded. When he realizes that she's been infected, he weeps.
Yeah.
Openly weeps. Back onto the engine where the butthole guy is now a zombie, he attacks the dad, and the dad fights him, and like it's all very exciting, and like they're hanging off the train, and at some point the pregnant lady tries to help, and then the zombie guy goes after the pregnant lady, and so to try to protect her, business guy grabs the zombie from the back and he puts his hand right over his mouth, and I was like, no, don't do that. And of course he gets bit.
I did not see that coming. I didn't
either, and I didn't want it to happen.
And I thought, what's he going to do? Is he going to chop his hand off? Is he going to put a tourniquet around there? I mean, surely.
No. Instead, he throws the butthole guy off, and he ushers the pregnant lady and the girl into the car. And the girl is, just a mess. She's screaming and sobbing and weeping. And he tells them, this must be the brake. Once you're safe, pull the brake, and that's what you'll have to do. And then he goes and talks to the girl. And it's so sad. I mean, she's just weeping, and she's saying, please don't go. It's my fault. Like, I assume that she's thinking that, they were only on the train because of her. And he says, something very sweet, like, I'll always be with you, or whatever. And then he runs out of the room knowing that he's going to have to jump off the train because he's infected. And then he just sobs, like he's just sobbing, weeping. And I found that to be so refreshing and real to see in cinema a man responding with that kind of emotion. And you just don't see it in American cinema, ever.
It's true.
Like, is that a cultural thing? Like, is it okay for guys to cry in Eastern culture?
I see it a lot in these dramas. The guys crying. They're all extremely dramatic. Everybody cries.
Well, whether or not it's a cultural thing or whatever, it was real. Oh my God, I was crying too. It was so sad. I felt so bad. This poor guy, who's had a rocky relationship with his daughter, and through all of this trauma seems to have really established a bond with her, and now, it's just over. There's nothing that he can do. And in the final moments when he's turning, and we get to see, his physical transformation, but in those final moments he just has a very brightly lit white flashback to his daughter's birth, and he's crying, but at the same time, he has a big smile on his face. And then I thought that it was just such a beautiful shot. Instead of showing it, we see the shadow, the silhouette, the shadow on the tracks on the ground of the train car, and of him standing there, and he just falls off and he's done. I didn't see it coming either, but it broke my heart. I swear to God. I'm a big crier anyway, but I was definitely crying at that part.
Well, Todd mentioned at the beginning of the podcast here that I had seen this before, and yet there were several places that I couldn't remember. And I have to admit, the ending was one I didn't quite remember. I didn't really remember if the dad was going to make it or not until we got to that point. And then I thought, oh, yeah, now I remember. But it's like I mentally wanted to block that part out of my mind because I didn't want it to end that way, you know?
Yeah.
But
I know.
One thing that did bother me about that last whole scenario with the a-hole guy and with him, during the whole movie, from the very outbreak, in the train car, as soon as somebody was bitten, man, instantaneously they turned.
Yeah.
But here at the end, you had these two characters that turned, but it took forever. And they were so conscious of what was going on during the whole time, whereas nobody else had that opportunity.
That's so true. Yeah.
It is. It was a little inconsistent.
Well, and that flashback to his daughter's birth, to me, at first I'm thinking, oh, God, you're going to do this to us. Like, you're just trying to rub some salt into the wound of the audience. But then, of course, I realized this is just, they're trying to put a happy spin on it, you know?
Yeah.
Trying to give him a smile on his face before he goes down. So I don't know how I feel about that. I thought it was a bit much, but okay, whatever.
I loved it. I thought it was so sweet, and I just cried and cried.
It wasn't as bleak, you know. I mean, for a movie that should be pretty bleak, I guess they tried to make it less bleak. You know, I mean, we review a lot of bleak stuff. You know, where just horrible things happen to people, and there's nobody's smiling at the end of it. So for them to kind of put that touch onto the end of this movie was actually pretty nice for us. I thought.
Well, and that wasn't quite the end. They still had one more twist at the end.
That's true.
They come up to finally get to Busan, and what happens? They come to a blocked train track right in front of the tunnel right before Busan. So they get off the train and they're going through this dark tunnel, and what's on the other side? The army, waiting for other zombies to come through the tunnel so they can shoot them and kill them, you know? And you're thinking, these people aren't going to make it, you know?
Yeah.
In fact, you know, they couldn't tell in the dark if they were real or not, or zombies, and the commanding officer gave them the order to go ahead and shoot them. So the sniper was just getting ready to shoot him. And you think, well, nobody's going to make it, you know?
Right.
I was really thinking that was going to happen. I thought, surely not. A movie that just gave us this beautiful moment with his father and his daughter isn't going to kill the last two survivors.
I was worried.
And what saves them? She sings the song that she wouldn't sing in school at the recital because her dad wasn't there.
Yeah. Oh.
And
it's so sweet, and I don't know that song, but I always think of it as the hula song.
Aloha.
Yeah, I love it when you sing, Todd.
I try to put a little bit of singing into every episode because Craig loves it so much.
But I don't know, like, I that song is very familiar, but I didn't know the translation. And of course, we have the subtitles. Apparently, the lyrics of that song are, "We'll meet again when the flowers bloom." And the last words of the song are, "Until we meet again." And that was the thing that saved them from getting shot. And then, you know, you see, like, the soldiers, I feel like you see them racing in to get them, but that's it. Then that's the end. But I just thought that was such a sweet ending that, you know, she had said to her dad, "I couldn't finish the song because I rehearsed it for you and you weren't there." I'm getting choked up talking about it. And then she just lost her dad, and she sings that song out loud and proud, and that's what saves them. And oh gosh, it was so sweet. I loved this movie. I thought that this was a great movie. I would certainly go as far to say as that this is my favorite zombie movie that I've ever seen. And I would recommend this movie to just about anybody, because even though it is a horror movie and there is gore and it is scary, I feel like it's also a very human drama, and it's good storytelling, and you care about the characters, you're invested in the characters. I was on the edge of my seat for most of it. I was so surprised because I went into it thinking, okay, another zombie movie, whatever, and I it was done, and I turned it off, and I walked into the kitchen with the tears running down my face, and I said to my partner, "That was a really good movie." and he was like, "You're crying?" I was like, "Yeah, it's really good." He was like, "A zombie movie?" I was like, "Yeah."
Oh, well, this, I think what makes this movie, and this movie was a blockbuster hit when it came out all over Asia. It was the #1 film in Singapore, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Japan, Korea, obviously. Made more than 90 million. Obviously, you can watch it now on Netflix if you want. There was talk of a sequel. I don't know if that's still going on. That was a couple years ago. But I think the thing that gives it that universal appeal is kind of like you said, it doesn't really dwell on the horror aspect, right? I mean, the zombies are the obstacle to overcome, and they're relentless, and they're ruthless, and some gross things happen, and they're gross. But this isn't a movie where you're getting lots of close-ups of people ripping flesh out, and severed arms and blood splattering everywhere. It's really, I say, just as much an action thriller, as it doesn't need the zombies. It could be, it could be guys in black trench coats, running around shooting people.
Sure.
It's the drama. It's that aspect that you care about the characters. It has these great action sequences that are really well shot and really tense. That makes this a movie, I think, that would appeal to so many different people. Except my wife, who wouldn't want to see anything with a drop of blood in it.
Yeah. Fair enough. I told Alan, I said, this would be one of those movies that if you had watched it with me, you would say, well, it was a lot better than most of the shit you make me watch. Oh, man.
What are some of your final thoughts, Dan?
When you asked me what would I have for a suggestion for a movie, I had to sit for a few moments and think. But yet, this movie popped into my mind pretty quickly after a few moments, more so than any other movie that I could think of. And I don't know why. I didn't know why at the time. I just remembered seeing it, and it was that kind of a genre thing that I thought you guys would really get into. So I really thought it was a great movie.
It stuck with you, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you recommended it because I don't think that I would have watched it otherwise, and I'm so glad I did, and I will probably watch it again. I thought that I just loved it. I thought it was fantastic.
Well, thank you, Dad, for recommending it.
Oh, you're welcome.
And it's been wonderful here having you join us for this episode. Very special.
Thank you so much. It's been great.
Well, I've enjoyed listening to your podcast. I never expected to be on one myself, but I thank you for inviting me.
Big surprise. Maybe this won't be the last time.
Come back anytime. Yeah, anytime.
Well, thank you again for listening to another episode. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with a friend. You can find us on Google Play, Stitcher, iTunes, anywhere you can find your favorite podcasts. You can also find us on Facebook. We have a page there where you can like us, leave a comment, tell us what you thought about this movie, and of course recommend other movies in the future. We also have a website, twoguys.red40net.com, and you can go there and occasionally even find some written movie reviews that we put out, usually about every Thursday. Until next time, I'm Todd.
I'm Craig.
And I'm Craig.
With Two Guys and a Chainsaw.